valued the cost in order to sell the program. They came and they told us, oh, we can pay the guys this much. Well, what are we, less than 2 years down the road, and we're asking for a 33% increase? We ordered 2 fire trucks, both of which, when we ordered them, came in $200,000 over what we were told they were going to cost. Now, there's all kinds of other stuff going on, and none of this has anything to do with the firemen that are out there risking their lives trying to protect our community. But Taylor Fire Hall, they build the fire hall, they pull the truck in the fire hall, and guess what? The door won't close because the building is too short to park the fire truck inside of it. They've got 2 or 3 of these brand new fire halls that the roofs are leaking. Now, these fire halls were built with FEMA money because they're supposed to be community shelters for tornadoes. Now, tell me, folks, if the roof in less than 2 years is already leaking, how safe do you feel as far as it being a shelter from a tornado? It's not sheltering from the water. But none of that's getting out in the public because we wouldn't want to be embarrassed, or we wouldn't want people to think that we misled them.
Tom Christ said we need to do this because the firemen are making a little more than minimum wage.
Were they making that 2 years ago when they sold us as the cheaper alternative to a combined department?
Listen to this one. We are all capitalists, market-driven people, Mylan Blake said. The market is telling us we are not paying our firemen enough. They are going to other places to get paid more for the services they provide. This is the market. Even being short of anti-tax, as I am, the market is telling us we need to make adjustments to our compensation package.
Look, I don't disagree with what Mylan or Tom Christ said, either one. They're both right.
Yeah.
And they have a decision to make going forward, and I said that. And the men are entitled to ask for this because they probably are underpaid. My problem is we never make people confess and admit that they were either wrong or that they manipulated the public image. They told us this was the cheaper deal. Well, it's not turning out to be the cheaper deal. And people go, well, why do you want them to have to admit that they were wrong? If you don't admit you were wrong, and if the public doesn't know you were wrong, then you keep making the same mistakes over and over again.
Kind of like telling a lie. It'll always catch up with you, won't it?
Well, but that's the problem here. A lot of times these lies don't catch up because our media doesn't really investigate anything in Bradley County. We need media that actually investigates things, actually pays attention and says, wait a minute, didn't you say the opposite a month ago?
Welcome to the show, Franklin Chansey.
Hey,
Glad to
welcome
be
back,
here.
Franklin. Amanda Lee was chosen to fill the Critchfield seat on the Bradley School Board. Yep. Who knows Amanda Lee?
Don't know her. I know of her. She was, I think, the president of the PTO down at Black Fox, and from everything I understood, did a great job. I think that that's a good appointment. I will say that when she put her name in, I understand that some people came and actually asked her to pull her name out.
Why would they do that?
Well, I heard that they actually said that they wanted a man that was more aggressive. Now, these are some of the same people that were defending Mr. McDaniel as being the best choice. I personally find that offensive. I don't know Miss Lee, but I have faith that she is a sharp, intelligent, honest person, and I think it's wrong to tell anybody to pull out. And so I'm offended by that, and I'm offended by the fact that they would say anything about a man versus a woman.
School board. They've hired a consultant, I guess, to go after a new school board superintendent.
I'm not a big consultant person, but that's their decision.
I guess you have to start somewhere, though, right?
Well, I thought that's what we voted 7 people into office for.
Good morning, Franklin.
Good morning.
Had a rough morning this morning?
Well, it didn't start off very smoothly, that's for sure.
Well, welcome to Backfire, where everything goes smoothly.
That's what I hear.
You missed an interesting conversation. I got John to educate us on fluoride in the water.
Okay.
We probably would have agreed on that, Franklin. So.
Hey, I want to play something. Before we put your headsets on just a minute. This is Joseph P. Clancy. He's a Secret Service chief. Unbelievable, this guy is.
So this was on a Wednesday night. I found out Monday. And what I heard initially, the initial reports from an anonymous report was that, as you stated, two senior level special agents had crashed into the White House and they were inebriated.
Why did you not learn of this incident immediately?
Yes, sir, and that's what we're trying to find out through, obviously, the Office of Inspector General.
I don't care about the Office of Inspector General. You say you're not investigating because you want the Inspector General of the department to investigate is hogwash.
Well, I watched this guy speak, and it was unbelievable to me to watch this guy speak. I promise you, this person in the real world wouldn't make it over the bottom pay grade. And he is now head of this department, this Secret Service chief. Unbelievable how naive this guy is. I mean, and how bureaucratic it is. You know, he's sitting here in a position that he's supposed to be notified immediately of something, and he's starting to put it off on another department or somewhere. He's waiting for reports. Another thing that went on, he started talking about the security around the White House. He wants to build a mock White House so that they can properly train in it and properly work their dogs and properly do this. They have a facility now that they train for the White House, and they measure the distance to the fences and so forth. But they want a place that has actual fountains and ponds and so forth, and they want an actual White House that they can practice defending. What kind of nuts have we got working in this world? I mean, the guy's really a nice guy. Don't take me wrong. He's really a nice guy, but just listening to him. But he ain't got enough sense to get out of the rain.
I'm not defending him. I will say apparently he's been on the job about a month and a half or something like that. But I will tell you, if I had been on the job a month and a half, I would have viewed this as a golden opportunity. I would have immediately fired both of those men, terminated their careers immediately. By the way, that's not a full explanation.
No, it's not.
They drove through the barrier, and then there was an active investigation site with a suspicious package. They almost ran over the suspicious package on the White House grounds.
It's a very serious matter. It needs to be treated very seriously. And I tend to agree that heads need to roll.
Those two, right off, they should have been fired that night.
That's right. And
they're on administrative leave while we investigate.
Well, he even goes on to say that this happened, on a Saturday or something? Wednesday, and he didn't get notified until Monday.
Yeah, that's
totally
unacceptable. And whoever was responsible for that should go too. I agree.
But, I mean, he didn't seem to think that.
Here's the real problem for me, and it reflects on him as well. What have we done to our culture that two men who have achieved that level of success in their chosen field, they're guarding the President of the United States, can't control themselves any better than that? You know, if you get one guy and he gets drunk on the job, then perhaps you say, well, he's got a drinking problem and he succumbed to his temptation. When two of them together do it, there's a problem with us as people almost.
Well, there's got to be a problem with the employer. I mean, they are they are employees, and they obviously think they can get away with it.
Well, to be honest, this is the same type of thing I talk about all the time, the difference between the way business operates and the way government operates. Government doesn't ever suffer the consequences of their actions, so they tend to not worry about the consequences of their action. In the real world, if that was a private security firm, those guys had been gone that day, immediately. But in the government, hell, you can't fire any. We've got teachers in New York City that sexually molested children, and it takes 3 years to fire them. And they actually sit in a room collecting their pay.
Well, do you think that this could be part of the cleanup in our budget?
You know,
I mean, when you've got people like this working for you, you just go in there and eliminate them. You can find somebody better and get rid of a lot of these salaries.
Well, the problem is you got to have somebody on the White House grounds
Yeah,
protecting the
I mean,
president.
I don't think cutting back the size of the Secret Service is an option for anybody.
It should be a reflection, though, on the bigger government gets, the more insulated it gets from the repercussions of their actions, the worse it gets.
The first thing this gentleman talked about when this happened was there was an investigation going through an entirely different department.
Look,
than this guy's
he's
in charge of it.
That's a mindset problem, and that's one of the problems with government. And quite frankly,
That's where you got too many
don't get me
employees.
wrong. This is a problem in Republican and Democrat administrations, but it's particularly bad in this administration. That's a mindset problem. You don't need an investigation to fire 2 Secret Service agents who drunkenly drive through the gates of the White House. You don't need an investigation. You just fire them immediately.
I guess they're afraid they'll get in the newspaper or something.
Well, no, we can't hold them responsible because then we'd have to hold everyone else responsible. And nobody wants to be held responsible, so they all defend each other. That's the problem with big government.
Hey, let me ask you something. What is the Congressional Review Act, CRA? Either one of you know? You understand what it is?
I don't know.
I really don't know either, but I came across this, and this is, as you know, over several decades, much of Congress' constitutional authority has been subsumed by an ever-growing executive branch. Now that trend has gotten much worse under the Obama regime. Fortunately, the Congressional Review Act, CRA, allows Congress to overturn outrageous regulations like the bureaucratic power grabs rammed through the Obama Labor Board. So I guess is this like a committee group?
I'm sure it's part of what we consider the checks and balances of our system, that if one branch of government gets too big, that you have another branch that has power to try and rein that in, and I'm sure that's part of it. I mean,
the process is that when legislation is passed, that then the executive branch begins to create rules or regulations to implement the legislation, and that's the ordinary part of the process. And then I suppose this is something that gives the Congress the ability to go back in and review those regulations. There's another one that's out there where they're allowed to review them after so much time has passed. I don't know if that's the same.
Which is probably a smart thing.
Yeah, probably.
You know.
Well, this guy was referring to unions. Basically, they were trying to push another bill through, and the CRA had to come in and get involved in it. They were trying to push through.
Well, this president has greatly expanded the imperial powers of the president. You can laugh, Franklin, but the liberals are starting to actually worry about this. One of his biggest critics is Jonathan Turley, George Washington Law University professor, and I know Jonathan. He's one of the most left-wing liberal people in the world. And he says, I agree with a lot of what the president's done, but he has dangerously eroded the separation of powers and is endangering our very form of government. Now, that's an extreme liberal who actually agrees with what happened, but says it was done the wrong way. And Franklin, I'm waiting for a conservative Republican president to be in there to start utilizing these same, what I consider abuses of power. And when he does, I'll call them abuses of power. I'm waiting for you to chuckle and laugh about the Republican doing it.
During the Reagan administration, during the first Bush administration, during the second
You're going to give us numbers, aren't you?
No, I'm not going to give you numbers, although that is a relevant consideration.
It's not relevant.
Too. During those things, every single one of those, the Republican Party in lockstep said what we need is a more aggressive and powerful executive. The Congress has too much control. Do more by executive orders. There was no doubt then that they had all this authority. It's only when there's a Democrat involved that this suddenly becomes a constitutional crisis.
No, it's only when there's a guy who's not tethered to reality.
No, it's a fact,
Franklin,
that this Congress
has done,
for 6 years has done nothing.
Actually,
and so it's not a surprise.
You're absolutely right because
and
of your
Senate. It's not a
Senate,
surprise.
because of the Democrat and Harry Reid in the Senate.
It's not a surprise that a executive is going to step up and do something when nobody else wants to do anything.
Not if he actually is the constitutional scholar that he claimed to be. Franklin, the executive action on immigration, he gave 23 different speeches where he said, I do not have the authority to do that. And then he turned around and did it. So let me ask you a question, Franklin. Was he an idiot when he said it the 23 times, or was he an idiot when he did it?
Apparently, he wasn't talking at a low enough level for you to understand it, John. Because we're talking about different issues.
No,
there.
he specifically said, I can't do this.
That's right.
He was actually asked about what he did.
In his speech and his action, he said there were other things he would like to do that he didn't have the authority to do.
And then he did
and that's what he was. No, he didn't.
Franklin, he actually, in several of the addresses, specifically mentioned the very things that he has now done in his executive order, and specifically said, I don't have the authority to do that. Then he turned around and did it.
John,
the guy
you're just cherry picking. You are.
He is a dictatorial person. He doesn't believe in looking at the results of what he does because he's an ideologue, and he thinks he's smarter than everyone else in the room. The real problem is if we could ever actually see his grades, he's not that smart.
And
that's
he's from
one of the
Kenya
problems
too, right?
He's not that smart, Franklin.
He's from Kenya.
Now, see, that's how you all do. You all cloud the issue.
Not, John.
The issue is,
all
right, Franklin,
why
listen. Can't I see his college transcripts? Why
and your
can't I
party
see his
have started
transcripts?
from day one and tried to delegitimize the president.
Let's talk about.
We can all argue about why that is.
Let's go through each issue. Let's just talk about everything
And
he's
actually,
done.
Franklin, you're right. We failed at that because your president did a much better job of delegitimizing himself by himself.
Let's talk about the most current thing.
Which thing?
Netanyahu, I can't ever say his name.
Netanyahu.
Election. Did Obama get involved in the elections over in Israel?
Not that I've seen.
His top campaign advisors all went over, worked for the opposing party. There's 15
opposing parties.
No, they went for the main one because they're a parliamentary form of government. They went over, worked for the main opposition, and his own State Department, Franklin, this fall gave a grant to a company that had already stated they were going to energize the vote in Israel. Well, guess what we found out energize the vote mean? They specifically targeted increasing the Arab turnout in the election, the anti-Jewish turnout in the election. While this president said, I'm staying out of it.
You don't think it's not? You don't think it's true, Franklin?
It is true that a group got some money, but it's a group that was not fostering that. It's a group that supports what has been American policy for the last 40 years,
Franklin,
that there's a two-state solution
that they
to Middle East peace.
Well, you know what, Franklin? The Prime Minister of Israel is entitled to a different opinion. And he has
Who said he's not?
That group fought against his reelection with U.S. dollars in hand. That's the plain, simple reality, Franklin. Your president
U.S. policy through
and
6 or 7 administrations, Democrat and Republican, has been the same.
How many Republicans?
So you're upset
Franklin?
that we've done something that advances what has been the bipartisan policy of the United States
Franklin,
for the last 45
you're saying,
years.
So in other words, what you're saying is it's okay because Netanyahu didn't agree with us, so we should have worked to vote him out of office.
No.
That's what you just said.
It's okay
Franklin,
for us to do things that advance our policies.
They worked at increasing the Arab turnout in the Israeli vote. You think that's appropriate?
What I think is what I've been saying in here for the last 2 or 3 years, that there's a crisis building in Israel because of the fact... So in other words,
that's a lawyerly answer of yes, I think it's okay to increase the Arab vote in Israel.
If they have the right to vote there, of course it is,
You
John.
think it's a good move for the President of the United States to send his top campaign people over there to do that?
Wait a minute. It's not what happened.
Oh, here's what happened. He said he was in a room one time, and his top campaign advisors were standing around. He went, boy, it sure would be great if some top campaign people went over there and worked. But he didn't specifically tell them to go do it.
Because these top campaign people are experts in
Franklin,
Israeli
his
politics.
number 2 campaign guy in his reelection was running the campaign in Israel. You don't think that that's a bad image? Obama's number 2 campaign advisor went to Israel and worked. I don't know the guy's name. I'll bring. Fine, Franklin.
It's all over. Hey,
right
Franklin,
now.
if you'd ever watched the other channel, it's all over the news. Okay, on where you get news, if you can go there, you can find the name.
Fox.
Let's take a
Where
break.
you get news.
You are listening to WOOPLP. Cleveland, Tennessee. Whoop FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Check into cash. The cash you need is closer than you think.
Get an auto title loan today for up to $2,500 at Check Into Cash.
You drive home with the cash in your pocket.
Visit Check Into Cash for an auto title loan today, or get a payday advance for up to $425. Call toll-free 877-262-CASH. Title loan amount determined by value of car and ability to repay. Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
This is Mike Hodden with All Mail Salvage. We at All Mail Salvage are having Customer Appreciation Week, March the 14th till March the 21st. The first day of spring, we will raise our prices from $5 a hundred on shred to $6.75 a hundred on shred. We're raising our prices on copper from $1.90 a pound to $2.30 a pound. Whole cars are going from $5.50 a hundred to $7 a hundred. The aluminum cans we're raising from 40 cents a pound to 68 cents a pound. This is only for this week, and we'd like to see you come in. On the 21st is the first day of spring, and we're hoping to have a great spring this year. And we're also going to have hot dogs and hamburgers on March the 18th, 11 to 1. This will go on from the 14th till the 21st. We hope to see you there. Thank you from All Mail Salvage. All Mail Salvage is located at 1050 Inman Street. Our telephone number is 476-0064.
Guns, guns, and more guns. That's right, folks. U.S. Money Shops has just received a large shipment of pre-owned Glock 22s, 23s, and the awesome Beretta 8040D Cougar. These guns are law enforcement trade-ins that start at just $379.99 while supplies last. At U.S. Money Shops, there's no shortage of guns, so if you're looking for a great deal on a newer pre-owned gun, then check us out first.
Buy or sell or apply today, the better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Visit usmoneyshops.com for the location nearest you.
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop into cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it. Dig it, dig it.
The following is the most important PSA Whoop FM has put out in a very long time. Please listen carefully and spread the word.
Hello, my name is Doug Mizell, and I've been a lifelong resident of Cleveland, Bradley County, Tennessee. Through the years, I've developed an intense, abiding love for this part of the country and its deep-rooted history and heritage. This land is the cradle of an event that is epic in the annals of history. The story of the Trail of Tears is a saga that has been unreported and undertold to our nation for far too long. This tale of romance, politics, tragedy, and murder has all the elements of a major motion picture or TV miniseries. The intent of this editorial is to bring this opportunity to the attention of the city and county leadership. A united effort from our city, county government, and our Chamber of Commerce to invite the motion picture industry to entertain the thoughts of making a movie from this riveting era of American history could have immense economical impact on our region. I urge our listeners and our city, county leadership to consider this proposal and take up the challenge. This could be the opportunity of a lifetime.
Hello, my name is Andy Figglestaller with Ed Jacobs & Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
Dr. Christopher Chase, with Associates in Plastic Surgery, now offers his patients the convenience of a Cleveland office at 2350 North Ocoee Street. Dr. Chase specializes for the ladies in breast augmentation, including lifts, reconstructions, and reductions, also tummy tucks or mommy makeovers, and facial rejuvenation, including facelifts, eyelids, brows, nose, and he also offers Botox procedures. Check out Dr. Christopher Chase. He is certified by the American American Board of Surgery, the American Board of Plastic Surgery. He's a member of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons and the American Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. Check their website out at aprs.md. That's aprs.md. Call for your convenient appointment in Cleveland at 624-0021. 624-0021. 2350 North Ocoee. That's Dr. Christopher Chase.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, welcome back. We've calmed down. Everything's kind of
Let me correct something. The man's name is Jeremy Byrd. He was Obama's, he is Obama's campaign's national field director in 2012, and he is now being labeled by this anti-Netanyahu group as their secret campaign weapon. So he was the national director of Obama's grassroots campaign in 2012. Franklin.
And he's been over there working for quite a while, and there is some of our money over there with him,
hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Anyway. That's why I brought that up.
Oh, and by the way, reports of Netanyahu's death have been greatly over-exaggerated. Apparently, not only did he survive, but they've won the majority again in the vote yesterday.
Well, not a majority.
Now, not according to...
Well, they've won the majority as compared to their chief rival, and they will now have to put together a coalition.
I mean, they get. I think they won something like 29 out of 120 seats, which is the highest number. His chief rival got 24, I think, is the early.
Well, I read about the guy that they were pushing so hard to get in there, and I don't think that Obama would have liked him. I don't think anybody else would have liked him. He's a little bit liberal. 300,000 new voters. Oregon. Have you heard anything about that?
Hadn't heard that one.
Oregon pioneers the automatic voter registration law.
Oh, auto voter.
Mm-hmm. Oregon became the first state to automatically register Americans to vote on a new bill signed into law by Democratic Governor Kate Brown, puts the burden of registration on the state instead of voters, according to the Associated Press. The law makes it so that anyone over 18 who is registered to vote in Oregon, but who is not registered to vote in Oregon, who has dealt with the State Drivers or Motor Vehicle Services Division since 2013, will be mailed a ballot in 20 days from the next statewide election.
They have a unique system in Oregon anyway. All of their elections are by mail. They don't actually have polls. It's been that way for many years. It's an odd system, but that's how they do it. So
well, it's because it's such a huge state, and it's got huge expanses and low population. Mm-hmm. But that's been a Democratic pipe dream for decades. We've called it motor voter. In other words, if you have a driver's license, you're registered to vote.
17 years ago, Oregon became the first state to use the mail-in.
Now, keep in mind that the Democrats are also, in a lot of these states, giving driver's license to illegal aliens.
Well, I understand that. I mean, basically, they're promoting them to go sign up for a driver's license. Then, 300,000 new voters?
Just with the swipe of a pen.
That's unbelievable, Franklin. Why would they want that?
Y'all have been saying
why would
you want a driver's license to be the reason you get to vote. So.
I want
as identification.
We want an identification.
Well, you got to have identification according to that.
To be an American?
I don't know. I don't know what issues they have in there.
Let me rephrase it. We would love to have some kind of identification that proves that you are a legal citizen.
That is
of this
a particular
and are allowed to vote.
But think about the particular combination of that law with voting by mail. The whole point of showing an ID is we want to make sure that John Jones doesn't have his voice stolen by someone coming in and voting in his place. If you're mailing a ballot out and no one's actually looking at whether is that John that marked that ballot or is that George, and I can tell you a lot of the states, Atlanta for example, they had absentee ballot requests. One address had thousands of absentee ballot addresses come to it, to the same address.
Well, you You had hundreds of people in Cleveland for a long time registered at the same address.
But frankly,
Lee University.
That's Lee University.
Yeah, but still,
this was one
that's
house.
not proof of anything.
This was one house, not a university. It was one house in Atlanta with thousands of people registered at it.
I bet it was a Democratic house.
I don't know.
Well, I can tell you the Fords out in Memphis, they weren't voting Republicans. Dead Republicans.
Did you hear anything about the IRS average age that they carry on the rolls?
Oh yeah, I did. There's it's
isn't that like 110 or something?
Social Security.
I mean, Social Security.
6.5 million Social Security numbers are issued to people over the age of 112 years. Now, we know that only 35 known individuals over the age of 112 are living worldwide.
Yeah.
Only 35 in the entire world that we know of are over 112, but we have 6.5 million Social Security numbers active.
How hard would that be to stop?
Well, I can tell you
harder than you think.
I bet it wouldn't.
Well, Franklin,
it was really an interesting story, and it's worth looking into. But on 60 Minutes the other night, they profiled this very issue and interviewed these folks at the Social Security Administration who were explaining what the difficulties are. They actually have some systems in place where when someone goes over 100, they start watching their account to see if there have been any Medicare expenditures. As you're going to a doctor or something. If you go longer than so much time without having gone to the doctor, then they red flag that one to look at it. That doesn't mean there's not some fraud in the system, and there is. But they do have some processes involved in doing that.
One girl had been getting her mother Social Security for 30 years.
Well, let me skewer.
But in fairness, I mean, it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be looked at and shouldn't be resolved.
Let me
But in
skewer.
fairness, the amount of waste related to this comes out to something like 1/16 of 1%, and that's still a big deal to do. But don't make it sound like the whole system is screwed up.
Two things. Let me skewer this idea that they're working at it. Over 1 million of those number holders have actually been indicated as dead, but they were never turned their death entries into Numident, which is the group that's supposed to be taking them off the rolls. And just for your perspective, Franklin's talking about it's not a big deal money-wise.
I didn't say that.
If one half of 1% of this 6.5 million are being used by terrorists, that's 32,500 terrorists in the country. 1/2 of 1%.
Is there any evidence that that's happened?
You know what the evidence will be, Franklin, when another tower's blown up.
I got to run. I thank you all for your time and attention.
Hey, Franklin, it's been so humble around here with you this morning. Have a beautiful day.
John can run free and unbridled now for the next 15 minutes.
Something about free and unbridled just doesn't sound right.
Franklin's out of the building. All right, he's now running. I don't know what his hurry is this morning, but he's really in a hurry. He must have a paying customer waiting on him. Anyway, the 300,000 new voters, John, with one swipe of the hand.
Right.
What kind of world are we living in?
They're not trying to. The thing to look at that will be the absentee ballot request. What happens with all of that? We want everybody to vote, but we don't want people to have their votes stolen. And the idea that you should have to present some ID is not unreasonable. You have to present ID to check out a book at the Cleveland Public Library. I certainly think you ought to have ID to choose who the next president of the United States is.
I wish Franklin was still here because I know this would get some attention. But now Obama's coming out and he's blaming ISIS on George Bush.
Yep, it's Bush's fault.
What kind of crazy is this guy?
Well, if you're an ideologue, you believe what you believe irregardless of the facts. He is not swayed by the results of his policies. His policies have been a monumental failure, but he's not moved by that because he believes in the philosophy of his policies.
I mean, not long ago, he was calling ISIS the junior varsity. But now he's blaming Bush for ISIS.
Look, for over a year, the Iraqi government has actually been asking for targeted strikes inside Iraq against ISIS, and we refused. Now, they weren't talking about boots on the ground. They were talking about targeted strikes. One of the other excuses they're using, they're saying, well, the pullout table for removing our troops was based on George Bush's pullout, so that's what he's saying, that it was Bush's fault. The problem, though, is Bush never intended to pull all the troops out. And every one of Obama's advisors, military and national security, all of them told him, do not pull all of the troops out. And he pulled all of the troops out, and this ISIS thing is squarely on his shoulders.
They played it last night. I saw it played. There's a speech that Bush made
where he detailed everything.
Every detail.
I read it in here a couple months ago.
In fact, I'd like to get our engineer. I think we need to get that speech that George Bush made where he detailed what would happen if we started pulling all the troops out, if we didn't leave some troops in. He gave an explanation exactly as what is going on now.
Well, and this is worse than just what ISIS is doing in Iraq, because the only people now that are pushing ISIS back is Iran in Iraq. So he has now taken Iran and allowed them, they will control Iraq when they're done. Now, he's going to blame that on Bush, too. He actually said that. Well, if we hadn't removed Saddam Hussein, Iran wouldn't be in there. He's the one that's allowed Iran in there because he wouldn't take action. So Iran has come in. They've done that. We're negotiating with Iran. And while we're negotiating with Iran, they're developing long-range cruise missiles. Now, they're claiming that their nuclear ambitions are just for energy, even though they could pump the oil out of their own ground, supply all their energy needs with nothing else. They got plenty of oil, but they claim it's for peaceful means. Well, tell me what peaceful use a long-range cruise missile is. And just so you understand, the people he's negotiating with, his entire negotiation is based on the idea that they want peace. Just 2 weeks ago, they did a demonstration of how these new cruise missiles could destroy a U.S. battleship based in the Persian Gulf. They actually did a computer simulation and showed how they would blow our battleships up. This is the group that he says fundamentally wants peace.
Well, Franklin's not here to argue with you, so I'll just try to go along with you and state that, there's nothing that Obama has done to help our country. Is there anything that's good that's came out of his presidency?
Well, here's the problem. They'll go, oh, look, the unemployment rate's improved. Well, the reason the unemployment rate, we have more people who have quit looking for a job than ever in history. They just quit looking. So when you quit looking, you're not counted as unemployed anymore. This is the longest, slowest, worst recovery in the history of the country.
All right. Change the subject moment. What about Hillary Clinton? I'm afraid what's going to happen to Hillary is the libs are going to turn on Hillary and go against her, and then they're going to find somebody else. Well, I want them to keep her in there. I want her to run.
Actually, there's some interesting stories. There was a story last week that the stories about Hillary and her emails were actually leaked by Valerie Jarrett, the advisor to President Obama, and that their people are actively meeting with Martin O'Malley from Maryland and with Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts to try and get them to run against Hillary. The Clintons supposedly think that Obama and his people, they hate each other, and they're sure that Obama's people actually leaked these stories.
So you think that the Clintons and the Obamas are really, really...
Well, that's what all the reports say, that Bill Clinton really hates them.
But I swear I believe Hillary, they just came out and made another statement that what she did, that she did nothing wrong. That she did not sign the form or whatever it is.
Well, everybody's supposed to sign the form.
Yes, everybody else is supposed to sign the form, but she didn't have to, and the other two people in her position didn't have to.
Well, no, and they didn't say she didn't sign the form. They said they're fairly certain she didn't sign the form. Now, she has a personnel file. They took over a week to say they're fairly certain. Tell me what would have been hard for some secretary to go up there, pull her file, flip through the file, and see if that signed piece of paper was in the file. That could have been done. You had a former press secretary to President Bush, Dana Perino, said that could have been answered in one day. Well, it took them over a week. Well, the question is, why did it take a week? And if they were having so much trouble researching it, why did they also research Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell and say, well, we don't think they signed it either? What's the point of that? Nobody asked that. Now, I'm not against the press trying to balance the story and saying, okay, tell us about Colin Powell, tell us about Condoleezza Rice. But our own State Department preemptively gave that information out. In other words, instead of being worried about the State Department and the values and the issues that the American public expects the State Department to be protecting, they were worried about protecting Hillary Clinton and the Democratic brand.
And, she didn't sign her departure form.
Nope.
A departure form is something all the employees have to sign except the person who's the head of that department. Right?
Right. Oh, and by the way, the White House has now said that they are going to exempt the executive office from the Freedom of Information Act requirements. So the president, this is his quote early on, transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency. But he's now said that they're not going to answer Freedom of Information Act requests from the executive office anymore, the Office of Administration in the White House.
How can they do that, John?
Because he's the president. And he can do it. That's the problem with all these executive actions that Franklin's defending. He knows how the system works. The president can do whatever he wants to do. It may be illegal, but he can do it. Well, what happens is some group has to take him to court. They have to go in a small court, win there. It has to go up to the district federal court. Then it has to go up to the Supreme Court. It takes years and years and years. The reason Hillary is not turning over these documents is because they will be subpoenaed. They will be requested, but she'll deny it, she'll deny it, she'll deny it, and what she's hoping is they won't come out until after the election's over.
Well, can't they charge her with obstruction of justice?
Who's going to charge her? You think Eric Holder will charge her?
How about the next regime?
She won't charge her. They're not going to do that.
It's amazing to me.
So they're taking the very system that's in place, and they're playing with the bureaucracies and what is the definition of is.
What was it somebody said that they weren't going to vote for? Monica Lewinsky's ex-boyfriend's wife. The new GOP budget, balanced in 10 years, is what they're saying.
White House is against it.
They wouldn't think about balancing the budget, would they?
The new balance that the Republicans have offered would reduce the federal spending by $5.5 trillion over the next 10 years, achieving balance within 8 without raising taxes. It increases overall spending during the budget window, but at a lower rate of growth in the present trajectory. Now, that's important. When we say it reduces spending $5.5 trillion, that's not an actual cut. That means it reduces the amount we were going to spend.
Increase.
So it still goes up, but it doesn't go up as much. So we're not cutting anybody's budget. It also moves more money into the military, which we have severely damaged with these cuts. They've also calls for a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. It repeals Obamacare in full. It eliminates the Independent Payment Advisory Board, which was an unelected board. It's really what Sarah Palin was talking about when she said death panels. That's the board that would decide who gets certain treatments and who doesn't. And now they claimed, oh, it's not a death panel. Well, guess what? If you have cancer and they decide that because you're too old or too white or too male or too whatever, you don't get treatment, you die. That's a death sentence. If they deny your treatment, it's a death sentence. But of course, the White House is against it. It also closes a loophole in the disability insurance program that allows individuals. Right now, people can receive disability payments and unemployment payments. Now, think about that. You're getting a disability payment because you claim you're not able to work.
Right.
But you're also getting an unemployment payment for not working.
There's a lot of that going on right now.
Well, this would actually close that loophole. Now, President Obama's 2016 budget never balances. It has trillions in tax increases. It has tax increases and still doesn't balance. It would add $8.5 trillion to the national debt over the current budget window and does nothing to address our unfunded mandates.
What do you think is going to happen?
I think that the House will pass this budget. I hope that the new Senate will pass. Of course, the Democrats in the Senate are doing the same thing they did when they were in the majority. They've just swapped over, and they're doing filibusters. They filibustered. We had a anti-slavery act. And because we included the Hyde Amendment, which has been around for 20 years, the Hyde Amendment doesn't allow federal dollars to pay for abortions. Now, the public doesn't want taxpayer dollars paying for abortions. But because the Hyde Amendment was included in that, which has been included in legislation for years like this, the Democrats in the Senate have filibustered and shut down a attempt to limit white, not just white, all human trafficking and slavery in the world. So that's how important abortion is to the Senate Democrats. It's more important than stopping human trafficking and slavery.
Unbelievable. One more thing, I just want to kind of wind it up here with this. Ferguson. We keep hearing Ferguson. We have protests in Ferguson. What are they protesting in Ferguson right now? We had 2 police officers shot. What's the protest about?
Well, it's about the report that they put out. Now, the report had 2 pieces to it, and I think it was purposely designed to cover the fact that they weren't able to find any fault with Darren Wilson, the police officer. So that's the first part of the report. But then they come out and they said, oh, look, the actions of the Ferguson Police Department show disparate impact. Now, that's what they claim. What disparate impact means is that blacks in the community are, I think they're 67% of the 67% black in Ferguson. But they are a higher percentage of the number of traffic tickets and things like that. So the claim is that that shows inherent racism. Well, the problem with that is disparate impact is seen everywhere in the world. For example, blacks are far more statistically overrepresented among basketball stars in the NBA. Does that mean that the NBA is racist? Hispanics are far more represented among baseball stars than the general population. Asian Americans are far more overrepresented among students in leading engineering schools like MIT, Caltech. For example, this is where you get into nature. Men are struck by lightning several times as often as women. Does that mean that lightning apparently is sexist?
That means men are outside more, I guess.
Most of the tornadoes in the entire world occur in the middle of the United States of America. Does that mean that the earth is prejudiced against America? You know, the fact that more blacks receive traffic tickets does not mean that there is inherent racism or bias in that department. Now, I'm not saying there aren't problems in the department. I'm sure there are. Oh, by the way, the entire government in Ferguson is Democrats. They're all Democrat officials.
Another Detroit.
You hadn't heard that much.
No.
I guarantee you if it was a Republican government, you'd have heard that all day.
Another Detroit. Anyway, this thing just keeps rattling on in Ferguson, and it just.
Well, guess what? You go out to California to one of the liberal, I think it's San Diego, one of the liberal bastions, and that disparate impact that we're talking about in Ferguson is 3 times as worse in this liberal community. Matter of fact, in Manhattan, in New York, it's 2 or 3 times as worse there. No one's talking about that. They're only talking about poor little Ferguson down here, that the president and the Justice Department have literally destroyed that community.
One last thing, we've got to go. We're running late, but Mr. Obama said that he wasn't going back to Chicago after he finished office. There's more opportunity in New York for him.
Well, Rahm Emanuel's getting ready to lose his mayor's seat there. I'm sure that convicted felon that sold Obama his side yard will buy his house back from him.
Folks, it's great. Franklin, if you're listening, sayonara. Bye-bye. See you next week.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 8:30. Now, back to more music on Whoop FM.